10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to the AI Salon. Your video will start shortly. Please remember, you are human. Our guest of the hour, our guest of the 2 hours, Mr. PJ Loughran. Are you here? Are you still with us?
Oh, I'm here. I just had to find my cursor.
Yeah. So PJ is first of all, I'm so excited you're here. PJ and I have worked together on numerous ventures over the years. We were all coming up in the early days of the World Wide Web at agency.com together. There's a number of folks on the call from those days. PJ is the founder and CEO of, or I assume CEO of Boathouse Holdings, principal of, and runs these 3 companies: Imagine, which is a high-end experience. I'll let you talk about it. Funny Water, which is a beverage brand. Like, I can't believe you have a beverage brand, but you do. So cool. And Loughran & Co. The other thing about PJ you may not know, he's an incredible musician and a really incredible artist. Actually, a really incredible musician and artist. He's just an amazing guy, and has always been really thoughtful about the balance of technology, innovation, and creativity. And so I feel like you could just talk for an hour and we can just sit here and listen. What I would love for you to do is just give us some background and your thinking on this and spin up a conversation. So that's what I'm hoping we can do, but I'm so excited to have you here. So thank you for joining, and it's all yours.
Well, Kyle, thanks for that introduction. That was very nice. And thanks for having me. It's so funny. I was flipping through that deck, looking at those old agency.com slides, and holy shit, how lucky were we to be all together in that moment in time, in that place. And it set such a bar of optimism for me going into my career. I'm like, oh, this is starting a company is easy. It goes from like 50 to 1,500 people in 3 years. This is awesome. We'll just keep doing this. But it's funny how, we're talking now about this seismic shift in technology, and we started, in that place. And it's not really all that different in a lot of ways. It's disrupting things in a lot of the same ways. I guess I start off by, maybe I should just show the slides so that I can flip through these pretty quickly, Kyle, if that's cool.
Yeah, no.
So I'll start here. This is a self-portrait I did about 20 years ago. I went to, I was in high school as a very creative kid, not much of an athlete. Really enjoyed, the music department and the art department and the theater department, and pretty much anything creative I can get my hands on, including like the yearbook. I was dating a girl who was the editor of the yearbook, and I would just like hang out because I just loved, I just loved the dark room, and I loved they were all working on, I don't even know what program it was at the time, whatever that layout software was that was super antiquated. But I've always just loved, tools that allow me to make things, or being around, was it Quark Express? I think it was before Quark Express. I'm looking at all the comments. Yes, I love Ralph Steadman, so you're not far off there.
Yeah.
One of the Kyle and I were talking, we sort of probably talked about everything we're going to talk about today, but we were just talking about just sort of disruptive shifts that have happened when technology advances and how that impacts creative people. But quickly, I'll kind of show you some of my background in creativity. I went to Parsons School of Design in New York and first studied design, and then felt it was really limiting and switched over to illustration. And that's part of what I do still is draw for magazines and newspapers, and just for myself. This was a very early piece, the first piece I ever got published in the New York Times. This is 1994. Tiny little piece. I got paid $75 for it, and I felt like I had like conquered the world when this happened. And it's this tiny little thing that I don't think anybody ever saw. But drawing for me never gets old. It's something I always go back to. This is where I met Kyle. I was, I think, 22, 23 when I joined as a junior designer. And over time, we got to work on some of the biggest brands in the world.
I was going to say, you started as a junior designer. You quickly escaped the junior part of that.
I figured I was getting fired like every 6 months. I remember when I got my first promotion, I literally thought I was being brought in to get laid off. But we really had this incredible opportunity of jumping into this new technology and working for some of the biggest companies in the world. We all were kind of making it up as we were going along, I feel like, and inventing every day. And I always thought it was amazing that these businesses were trusting us with all this money to make these things, and they weren't even sure what the value of it was. But this sort of spirit of like, let's figure it out, let's see how great we can make it work was so interesting to me. And I remember a lot of my art school friends, when I was getting into web design and the internet, they all were shitting on it. They thought it was like, why are you wasting your time with this medium that is so aesthetically inferior to all these other things you can be doing? But this idea of the democratization of publishing was so compelling, like that anybody can make a thing and put it up and build an audience around it. And it's like, it's crazy that spirit exists today with social media and on and on. I mean, it's just like, it's never stopped, and it's just gotten even more and more compelling.
Can you go back a slide, PJ? I just want to share a funny story. I assume you know this one. Were you in the pitch for Coke, PJ?
No, I ended up getting put on it after the job was won.
Oh, after it was won. So we went down to pitch Coke, and you know, we knew it was a big deal, and we went down to pitch them, and there were like 17 people in the room. I think there were 6 or 7 of us from agency.com, and we had these sort of designs we did, but the Coca-Cola.com and the Coke.com websites at the time, the IT department had built them. So they were just like light yellow backgrounds with black text and tables and like hyperlinks to annual reports. And so about, I don't know, 10 minutes into the pitch, we had this slide that had a screenshot of Coca-Cola.com and Coke.com. And we put that slide up, and the headline on the slide was, "Where are the polar bears?" Right? We had all this slick Coke branding around it, but these websites just looked like horrific HTML pages. And this was Coca-Cola.com and Coke.com. The Coke people stopped the meeting, and they were like, we got to go. And they left the room. And we were just sitting in the room like, oh, shit, what did we do? Like, are we going to get fired? Like, what's going to happen here? They were gone for like 10 minutes. They came back in, and they basically said, when can you start? They had never looked at their website. So that thing you said, PJ, about we couldn't believe we were being trusted with these brands, it was that early that, you know, the biggest branding company in the world hadn't looked at their website, right? They didn't see it as a branding opportunity. It wasn't until we showed it to them that they were like, oh, holy shit, we're in trouble. Like we gotta fix this and now. And so
I think it's funny when these technological shifts happen and it's like the Wild West for a while. Like nobody knows how to price it. No one like, I feel like influencer marketing is still that. Like no one knows what this stuff is worth. It's still like it's like the Wild West. It's all over the place. I just thought it was crazy that we were getting trusted with this stuff, and not to say that I didn't. There were so many talented people in this business, but you know that we were considered experts was so exciting at the time. Where you know, for a whole company that was basically under the age of 30, and again, it reminds me of influencers now in a similar way, where kind of the experts are the younger generation who kind of understand the rhythm of these things a little bit better. It's really exciting when those things happen. So I worked at agency.com. I left agency.com because I was getting more and more illustration work, and doing more published pieces. And ultimately I wanted to be like living at home and living this bohemian lifestyle of just drawing and getting published. And I mentioned something to Kyle. When I was in school, I really embraced, Photoshop and digital early on. It was, I think, Photoshop 2.5 was what I learned how to use Photoshop on. And I think they had just released Layers, I think was the first that had just come out.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like there was a group of us that sort of blew our mind in what you can do with it. And I remember a lot of other illustrators that I knew, professionals that I'd met, or other people who were, I knew one guy who was doing watercolor paintings, another person who was doing etchings, and they didn't take me seriously. They didn't think that working. So I draw my work with a brush and then I scan it in and finish it in the computer. I've done that for a very long time. But because I was finishing my work digitally, a lot of these other illustrators, and we're talking about a few of them were very accomplished artists who are still, very well known today. They didn't take my work. They thought it was kind of bullshit. They thought, well, there's no finish. Where's the thing you hang on the wall, or where's the piece of paper? And I would say, well, you get a Giclée print, and you can get it printed on. And they said, well, that doesn't count.
That's not real art.
And I said, and I would have arguments like, well, how is an etching any different? I mean, how is printmaking any different? You just one is you're pulling ink through a screen, or you're pressing something down, but why is a computer any different than that? I never understood that pushback. And ironically, now you can't be an illustrator and not work digitally. You have to finish and deliver things on a computer. But had a lot of fun over the years, doing things like snowboards for Burton. This was for ESPN. This is a portrait of Michael Jordan. Hopefully you recognize him. And Magic Johnson. Done work for Rolling Stone, which was always a dream of mine, stuff for HBO. I did a cover for Time a long time ago. I ended up doing a book with the youngest marcher in the Selma Voting Rights March in 1965.
Wow.
And got to speak at the United Nations with her, which was just kind of, and I didn't know I was going to be giving a speech, and didn't write a speech, which was terrifying to have to do that. Probably not one of my best public speaking moments, but this book has traveled the country in this whole exhibit about civil rights, and specifically a lot about the Voting Rights March in particular. While I was illustrating, I was a jazz saxophone player in high school, but had started playing guitar. And actually, I don't know, Kyle, you probably know this, the first time I ever played guitar and sang in front of an audience was in the pit at agency.com. I think HT remembers this. We talked about it.
The pit was this place where it was a New York City building. It was two buildings connected. And so the pit was like 4 stairs down. So you'd enter this, and that's where all the creatives were. So it was the pit, and you just went down there. It's all these grungy creatives just, making images. And yeah, that was very cool.
So I played this song in the pit and got a lot of encouragement. And then went and started playing open mic nights, and then built a band and started traveling. So I was drawing during the day to make pay my rent, and then I was playing in New York at various clubs, and then eventually made a record and toured. And this is some of the tour photos from that. Kyle and I both have a real affinity for Martin Sexton, who's a songwriter that I've always been a big fan of, and got to tour with him and write songs with him, and really had this just super joyful experience living that out in my late 20s and early 30s.
I'm still jealous of you for that, right?
For the Martin Sexton thing?
Yeah. He's amazing.
He's still amazing. He just crushes it. Yeah. I ended up meeting my wife through this experience, and then realized I needed to start making more money. As much as being an illustrator and being a musician, the music wasn't paying very well. We were opening up for bands like REM and Maroon 5, but we were getting paid like $500 to do these opening gigs. I don't know if you guys know the economics of being an opening act. It's not good. So inevitably, I had a great experience, and decided like this was I really enjoyed that, and then decided I was going to start a creative agency. I had some friends who were starting to do this, and inevitably reached out to my old boss at agency.com, a guy named Aaron Sugarman, who started throwing projects my way. And that helped me build a creative agency. And we were doing a lot of Hollywood movie marketing for movies like Sex and the City. We eventually became Ridley and Tony Scott's agency of record for all their movies, and got to work on a lot of very exciting films during that time. And some really bad Ridley Scott movies as well. This was not a good film. And just sort of got to like Diving Bell and the Butterfly was a Miramax film. When there was Miramax, that was like a great film. And then we worked on some really bad movies like Bride Wars. But it was really fun just to play in Hollywood for a stretch and get to go to I'd go to LA and I'd get to walk around the lots and just to be exposed to that was really exciting. Eventually started doing stuff for Paramount. This is like early Marvel stuff that they were toying around with. Now, Kyle, I don't know if you know this, but Leah Weston, who worked at agency.com, had seen some of the movie work we were doing and hired me to go work for her at Lego. So we started doing Lego work. So all this great agency.com mojo just continues, to this day. And ended up with I didn't really know much about building a business other than my experience at agency.com. And at some point, somebody offered to buy the company. And I didn't know anything about selling a company or what that even meant or what equity value or, I knew nothing about M&A and kind of got a crash course in that when I sold the business. And then went to work for the company that bought the business. And as soon as my contract was over, about 2 years later, I started another company. I hated the working for someone else. I had a lot of trouble after building a company to go work for another company. Ended up building another creative agency, doing a lot of tour work, doing a lot of music work. We did a lot of brand work for Kesha and Kings of Leon and a number of big artists. Cat Stevens I got to work with, which was really a thrill. And what was fun for me was starting to kind of intertwine a lot of these worlds of things I loved. So mixing music and design and business and these things all kind of coming together. Inevitably, that business got sold by a company called Superfly, they're best known as the creators of the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival. And I had never been to a music festival before, so they bought the business, and I was the head of creative all of a sudden for a company that made these massive events, 100,000 people a day on a farm in the middle of Tennessee. My first year, Paul McCartney headlined Bonnaroo, which I'm a huge Beatles fan, and this was I'd never experienced anything like this. And all of a sudden, I was kind of thrust into this world of getting to build events, which I'd never had any interest in or inclination for, but then got really excited and immersed in it. You can see how excited I am here. This is me with less gray hair in 2013. This is like 3:00 in the morning. We were just over the moon that we were there. I got to play at Bonnaroo, which was really exciting. I guess, membership had its privileges, and I basically just bugged the owners and said, can I please play this festival? And they let me do it. Got to work on other events that we produced, like Outside Lands. Got to create festivals. So I started getting into branding and building live event brands. We did a comedy music festival with Comedy Central that we got to name it. So we came up with the name Clusterfest. And when we came up with this name, most of the company lost their mind, including the lawyers, saying you can't call a festival Clusterfest because if it's a clusterfuck, we're fucked. So I won this argument. Built a couple of other festivals, one in Denver that some of you guys might know if you live in Denver, called Grand Doozy, which lasted all of 1 year. Was not one of the better investments I made. Turns out there's a pretty good music scene in Denver already, and Red Rocks you can't really beat that. Did a festival in Phoenix. And then exited and started. This was some other stuff. We did a big event for Google called Google I/O, where we got to reinvent this. And I guess the reason I have this in here is just getting to play with the palette of gigantic things. So I was designing this. This is the ultimate outcome of what this event looked like. And this is how it started. And it really just started with a bunch of drawings. And then that led to some more complicated drawings, concept drawings, which frankly, you can do this kind of stuff with AI now.
Yeah.
And then we were asked to model the entire experience in Cinema 4D. I had never done any of this kind of stuff before. I'd never worked with 3D before, and just hired some very talented artists with some very powerful computers to sculpt these ideas for us. Working with a lot of technical illustrators. You know, what I've been really fortunate to be able to do is to be creative and play in a lot of different areas. And I've always sort of, I've always kind of felt like there's so much overlap between those things, you know, that if you think about songwriting and drawing and, you know, 3D modeling and event design, the skills are so similar. You're bringing a sensibility and a strategy and a concept to it, and you're bringing together resources, different kinds of resources who are generally going to be better than you at a lot of these things to help realize that and contribute to that vision. And that's kind of where I am now. Is I left this world and started a executive hospitality called Imagine, where we do high-end experiences for executives. We've done songwriting experiences at places like Abbey Road in London, where the Beatles recorded all their songs in Studio 2. We've done retreats to Iceland. We've done things in Mexico City. And this is kind of giving me the ability to do like music festivals, but for like 20 people or 100 people or something smaller, where the price point's a little higher, but it lets me sort of be creative in a very sort of more manageable kind of environment, and use food and use experience and music and all these various things to create these experiences. We just got a word about 2 hours ago that Ferrari is we just closed a deal with Ferrari where we're going to be doing a first of its kind tour of the Ferrari factory in Modena, Italy, a racing experience through Maranello. We have a villa in Lake Como where everyone's going to stay. Massimo Bottoro is going to be cooking for us, just crazy shit. And that's kind of what I really enjoy doing, is like, well, what if, you know, what if we just, what if we did this thing? I mean, how do we figure that out? I also started another creative agency. This is where things get stupid. I have 3 companies now, which, as Chris Needham, who's on this call, knows, he's been sort of like a semi-therapist to me for the last 6 months, trying to figure out how to make sense of me overextending myself a little bit. Rebranding this company now, it's now called Quartermaster, and this kind of gets us to AI. So we're creating a branding and communications company where AI, we're being really out front about the fact that we're using AI and it's integrated into all aspects of our process. And that includes creative, account, sales, kind of all different pieces. The name was inspired by James Bond. So Quartermaster is Q is short for quartermaster. I don't know if a lot of people know that. But this idea of us being kind of the special weapons force for brands and for companies to help them maximize the value of their business and their brands. And then, as Kyle said, yeah, I started an alcoholic beverage company, which was not really in the cards. It really started by a friend of mine calling me and saying, I have something I want to make, and I want you to do it with me. And I said, okay, what is it? He said, it's funny water. And I said, what's funny water? He says, I don't know. We're going to figure that out together. And we literally just kind of like walked around in the dark for a while, did a lot of research, and we created a flavored water with low alcohol and no bubbles. And it's designed to be a drink you can drink for long periods of time in a healthier way. And I got the idea from doing music festivals at Bonnaroo. We needed something so kids weren't getting sick and getting hurt. And that's where the idea inevitably came from. Sure. This is now in 35 states around the country. It's the hardest thing I've ever tried to tackle, but also like a massive amount of learnings as I've gone along. And that's really kind of where this all is right now, which is these 3 businesses. And, you know, AI is still new to me. I'm still stumbling around in the dark. I spend my weekends a lot of times just poking around all these tools and these apps that are integrating GPT and other technologies, and starting to kind of feed them into parts of my businesses. So for example, we let go of our copywriters in the agency, and we've replaced them with ChatGPT 4. Account managers and creatives are now being tasked with using these tools to craft copy. And it was a really difficult transition at first, but now it's working very, very well. We have AI note takers on all our sales calls and all our client calls. And it allows us to make synopsises for everyone we work for. We just started exploring AI prospecting tools for both the creative agency, but also for Funny Water, for retail outlets, and doing larger kind of outreach about what we're doing in communication. I could sort of go on, but we're trying to get it into all these different parts of what we're doing. And what I would say is, and Kyle, not to be redundant from our conversation the other day, but AI to me is just the next thing that I have to embrace and figure out.
Yep.
And if you look throughout the history you can go back to publishing and letterpress, right? You can go to, areas. These are areas I'm more familiar with, but letterpress to, when I was at Parsons, I was a design major my first semester, and as I was telling Kyle, I had to take paste-ups my first semester, meaning I needed to learn how to use a ruling pen, and I needed to know how to cut things out and paste into a board to build layouts for print. And then I'd have that class, and then the next class would be Quark Express, where I was doing all that digitally. And I thought it was hysterical. I just didn't know I was having to take paste-ups and learn how to use a ruling pen, because clearly that was going away. But you had these craftspeople who were teaching these classes who were incredibly adept at doing these things. And unfortunately, for any of them that didn't transfer to or adopt these new technologies, they were really left behind, and those careers got decimated. That's kind of what's happening now, is a lot of craft and specialty is beginning to get eroded. And it's really unfortunate, because people spend their whole lives learning these crafts and getting good at these things. But, ultimately, nimbleness and the ability to pivot, I think, take it outside of AI and creative work, but any entrepreneurs that can't pivot and can't adjust to how things change, that's where things get really difficult. I don't think COVID was all that different than AI in many ways. During COVID, I had an events company. I had an executive retreat company that only did in-person events. And if I had stuck to my guns and said, nope, we're going to wait this out, that company would be gone. And I had a very good friend of mine named Greg Latterman, who his claim to fame was he signed John Mayer to his record label, which was like the foresight this guy had to sign this kind of skinny white kid guitar player from Fairfield, Connecticut to his record label was just unbelievable. And he said within a week of COVID happening, he said, stop doing events, do virtual events. Everyone's going to have money, book talent. You're going to stay busy. And he was right. We stopped doing in-person events. We shifted to, we shifted to virtual events. And we really had a great year and a half from a business perspective, in a way that I thought we were going to have to shutter the business. And I give him credit for just putting that seed in my head. And if you guys remember, like, what the hell was a virtual event? That didn't even exist. And all of a sudden, it's all anybody was talking about. And because I happen to have this experience in music festivals, I knew how to book talent. I knew how to buy talent. And all of a sudden it became a thing. I think ultimately, not to go on and on here, but I think, when I was younger, I had a lot of interests, and I had a lot of people telling me that if I didn't specialize, I would never be successful. I had people telling me, you're good at music and you're good at art, but you're going to have to pick one. And my response to those teachers was fuck you. Exactly. It was straight up that. I was like, I'll show you. And for any of the people on the call who kind of know me a little bit, I am a little petulant that way. Like, I don't like to be told no. And I think that's a good thing, like, to have confidence in the fact that you can B, you can sort of play wherever you want to play, as long as you're willing to put the time and the discipline into it.
Yeah.
And I think, Kyle, you had a great quote the other day when we talked, and you said, this era is the era of the liberal arts major.
Yeah, the
meaning
revenge of the liberal arts major.
Whatever, it was so spot on,
Yep.
and because I think I was constantly feeling, for the last 30 years of working, I think that teacher, that comment was always in my head, like, oh, maybe I should have just done music, and then I'd be like, but whatever that is, or maybe I just should have stuck to this, and I'd be like the best person at this. And what technology is showing us is that the generalists are the ones that are going to come out of this in the best way. That it's not the craft, it's the way that you put the puzzle pieces together.
Yep.
And what I think AI is doing is just empowering us to be able to do those things faster and more efficiently. But it's also it's sort of championing the generalist, the person who can see all the pieces of the puzzle and knows how to kind of conduct the orchestra, for lack of a better phrase. And I don't mean to rip off Aaron Sorkin from that Steve Jobs movie, but I just love that quote. Like, he plays the orchestra. It's the conductors that are going to come out of this in the best way. This is not going to stop creativity. It's just going to let things happen much more quickly, much more efficiently, and give you a set of tools to play in even cooler ways.
Yeah.
It's funny. So I still write and record music, and I just finished a record that I launched on my 50th birthday. And when I started recording music, you had to go to a studio that was expensive to use. You had to have gear, compressors and EQs, all this outboard gear that would be stacked on these walls. And you had to have a lot of money to build a studio. You had to have a lot of money to record. Then that shifted to being able to record at home. And now what's happening with AI is that shifted even more. There's tools like, I don't know if anybody does music production, but tools like Ozone by Isotope, which is essentially a mastering software that has AI listening. So it'll listen to your mix, and it'll give you, within seconds, basically a strong mix based on the style of music that you want it to sound like. And it's damn good. It works really, really well. Now, that sucks if you're a mixing engineer.
Right.
There you go. Ozone 11. It's freaking badass. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But it just speeds that up. And it allows me to not have to spend on a mixer potentially. I'm not quite there yet, but it's good for me. It's not great for the specialist. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing is if you pigeonhole yourself into doing one thing really, really well, that's a lot of risk. I think just in life, change is constant. Nimbleness is important, and not being afraid to dive into these other areas. I think also there's a risk in your identity being tied to a craft to too large a degree. I've seen it with illustrators. I've seen it with different kinds of musicians. I've seen it with a lot of people, a lot of different roles. This is going to disrupt that. You're not going to be able to have an identity tied to a specific skill. I think you're going to start seeing that go away. And it's the strategic thinkers, the ones that can see the big picture, that are always going to have value. That's never going away from my perspective. So anyway,
awesome.
I just rattled on a lot, but I hope that had some value.
It's really good. It's really good. So you go ahead and turn off sharing so we can see you bigger.
Oh yeah, sure.
If you have a question for Peter, raise your hand. We'll have Ken go through that. I'd like to dig deeper on something, PJ. Did I just call you Peter? I was looking at Peter Kaminsky. PJ. What I'd like to tee up, PJ, is so I consider myself someone who's got, lots of interest and a handful of, I can execute well in a handful of things. You're one of those rare people that can execute well on a lot of different things. It's really impressive. The thing that I'm excited about with AI is I think it gives everyone a level up. So even if someone did specialize, their capacity to do high level work is sort of delivered overnight. And this is going to keep getting better and better and better. So I'm just curious, what's been your experience? You said you got rid of the copywriters and you're having account people now. Okay, now you're an account person, now you're an account person and a copywriter. Maybe now you're an account person, a copywriter, and a designer. Like, as people level up these skills, like, either what's been your experience watching other people do that, or what's your advice as someone who can kind of execute well analog, let's call it, right? Even if it's digital, but traditionally, what's it feel like as people around you are leveling up with these tools? Just
they hate it.
Do they?
It's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. The first comment I got from one of my account managers was, "I'm not a marketer. I'm not a writer." And my response was, "You have taste. I hired you because you sort of get it. You can see good when it pops up. You can spot it. And as long as you can spot it, you can conduct these tools to do what you need it to do." And it's an adjustment. They have to get comfortable with it. They have to feel confident in it. But I remember there's a woman who works on our executive retreats business, Imagine, and her writing, she always struggled with deck writing. She had to write itineraries and describe experiences. And we got her a license to ChatGPT, and you would never know that she couldn't write. She has this helper now, and it doesn't do the writing for her, but it gets her better drafts quicker than she had before. She knows what good is. She just had trouble kind of using the tools to get there because that's not her skills.
Right.
But if she can kind of keep pushing this thing, no, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. And then go in and fix. Just the delta is diminished to such a large degree that allows her to do the things that we want her to spend more time doing, which is understanding hospitality, understanding experience, and produce quality writing in support of expressing those ideas. But it was like a real problem. We were like, is this woman going to work in this business? She can't write. And I think that's sort of an amazing thing about this technology is it helps us fill in some of our gaps in some ways for a lot of people.
Has she stepped into it? Like, has it given her confidence?
She like almost too much though. Where I'm like, I can spot the GTP. I'm like, that's too GPT. We talk about this. we can spot it, and then you can spot it with Midjourney and these things. You can see, AI generated art a mile away right now, and you can see writing that's like it just feels too clinical or too marketing speak. And I think she's gotten much better at sort of like I haven't called her out on it in a while. She's gotten very, very good at it.
Wow, that's cool.
All right, Leah, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have a question or comment?
I did, and then I just was listening to see if it got answered. I think, PJ, something I'm thinking a lot about is after 25 years of doing what I do, which is photography and getting paid a lot of money to do it. As I start thinking about becoming a generalist and becoming better at other things, how do you think, how does someone who's very specialized and used to working in a market in a very specific way shift to being a generalist? And then how, as a business owner, do you leverage that, right? So I think we've gotten very good, illustrators who are successful illustrators because they're the one who is very good at personal brand, and photographers who are very successful are very, very good at their brand and their specific thing that they do very well. And one of the things that generative AI allows us all to do is if we're all creating, we're all making work, and we're all generalists, how then do we market what we do in a bigger, more competitive marketplace?
Man, those are really good questions. And Leah, I mean, I know you, so this is cheating because I could speak specifically to what I know of you. You're a photographer, but you're a lot more than that, right? I mean, you're a great thinker and researcher and seer, and ultimately it's I think for a lot of craftspeople, it's like having confidence that you're more than just this thing that you've defined yourself by for so many years. That's really scary. It's scary for me at times when I'm doing various things and realizing that I spent all this time learning how to do music production. That's going to go away. I've spent a lot of time writing songs. That's probably going to go by the wayside. Kyle, I don't know if you read that Lucian Grange article in New Yorker that I recommended, but it talks a lot about just how crazy powerful these tools are going to be in terms of comping ideas for things and songs, but I think it's embracing your experience and perspective, right? I mean, that's going to continue to have greater and greater value, but also not dismissing the craft, because the craft allows you to see, right? With photography, I used to say, like, I went to art school for 3 or 4 years or whatever it was to learn how to see better, and that's really what you learn at as a drawing major. You're learning, like, to train your muscle memory, but you're really learning to look at things in a more in a way that starts to add up and make sense. Like, if you think about design skills or photography skills when it comes to composition is not like intuitive. You sort of learn to understand balance the more you work in these spaces. You may not be clicking the picture necessarily, but you can see where something doesn't work or where it does work. Yeah. And ultimately that's kind of the most valuable part of it. And the ability to articulate that also, that's never going to become unimportant. Like, to be able to say, working with creative people, or working, to be able to say, this is great and this is why, or this isn't really working, and really be able to get into it and say, like, well, it's because this thing's not right, and you're not finding balance between these two things, and thematically you're a little bit all over the place here. I think that's really what the discipline of what you do as a photographer comes down to. Because, I mean, think about when they went from the Renaissance painting of when everyone's trying to get things to paint as realistically as possible, and all of a sudden the photograph came along and nobody gave a shit about realistic painting to the same degree anymore. They then started exploring the abstract expressions of what we're seeing, and it just opened up this whole new way of thinking about things and seeing things. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think you sort of have to just embrace it. And as it relates to business, it's focusing more on your experience and sight than it is on your ability to produce an image. I think that's where things are going to start changing pretty quickly. So I don't know.
I love that answer. And I was asking partially, but also for other people in the salon who we've talked about this very thing, is that, how do you make that switch? So that was great. Thank you for that answer. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Leah. Eric, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I have a question. Thanks so much, PJ. It's really inspiring seeing all the different things that you've done. It's very cool.
By the way, for so long, it felt like I wasn't making any sense of anything. So if nothing, AI is getting me to see that there was maybe some logic to all these different things that I've been pursuing.
I knew it all along.
I think my wife was often like, "We're shifting gears again? Really? We're gonna do another business?" So I feel like it's giving me permission now. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'd love to talk to you more about that. Honestly, I remember 20 years ago inviting somebody to do a bunch of sketches, and then they were like, "Oh, let's meet my friend for coffee instead." And I'm like, "What are you even talking about?" 30 minutes later, they're like, "See, to me, this is art." And I was just like very frustrated. I was like, "No, I wanted to draw in a sketchbook." And 20 years later, I'm serving tea to people as art and studying relational aesthetics. And yeah, there's just a huge world. But my question for you, it's really a little bit out there. But given that you have this kind of big way of looking at things, is just, how do you put stuff together? How do you do things with bigger stuff and new technologies? So you've seen these changes from like, having to pay for mixing. I used to have to pay to edit video. So I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
You've seen these changes and cutting out pages to Quark Express. So now we have the Vision, the Apple Vision Pro thing is still a little bit outside your body, right? And your phone, people say, oh, if you don't have your device with you, then you're naked, you're going out naked, but it's still not implanted yet. So once you have the phone tooth, or we just had the first Neuralink trials, right? They've just put something directly in somebody's head. How fast are you going to be adopting this? Yeah, I just kind of want your overall attitude. How aggressive an adopter are you going to be when you talk about pivoting and onboarding new stuff? Are you kind of an eager cyborg or a reluctant cyborg? And you don't have to answer this. I know this is really far out from your presentation. It's just that
No,
there were
no.
so many ideas in
Who's the
there.
guy? Ray Kurzweil? Is that the guy
Yeah.
who talks about the
Yep.
singularity and how much
Yep.
things are speeding up?
Yep.
I think it's just requiring us to adopt change faster and faster. And the people who are the most nimble are the ones who are going to continue to thrive. I think that's what it's not being afraid of change. And unfortunately, change is like what everybody, it's just human. Like we don't like it. I don't like it. It's scary and it's the unknown. And, I think it's continuing to just know that is the only consistent thing that we deal with in life is change. I wish somebody coached me on that more, when I was younger. Because as much as you're seeing me jump around and do these things, a lot of times it's terrifying to make these leaps, to quit a job, right? I mean, listen, to quit agency.com, I'll give you that example. I had an illustration agent who was making money off my drawings. And I go in and I told him, I'm leaving agency.com to become an illustrator full time. Isn't that great? And he's like, you're out of your fucking mind. You're gonna be so rich if you stay in this company. Just like stay the course. You can always draw. But I wanted to, at that point, I loved what I had done with that business, but my gut was telling me it's time to do this thing, So I try to encourage my kids to really listen to their gut and not be afraid of change. I mean, but we're all afraid of change. I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Don't be scared. Starting a business is such a ridiculously risky proposition always.
It's so
when I started these companies, like I got a mortgage and 3 kids, like the fuck was I thinking? Sorry for all the swears, but that's how I.
No, we're swear happy here.
But I think you when you know, and you got to listen to your whatever that thing is. And I think it's the ability to do that that's going to help, keep pace with a lot of this stuff. I think.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Anne Murphy, you have a question or comment?
I do. Hey, everybody. Thanks. This is like mind-blowing, and I missed the beginning of it, so I can't wait to see the replay. Question for you, which sounds so boring compared to what we've just been talking about, but how are you speaking with your clients about how you all are using generative AI?
We're not. They don't care. I'll be totally honest. They just don't give a shit. They just want great work. And honestly, that's the funny thing about all this stuff. I don't care how you do it, as long as they don't have to worry about it and you're going to deliver for them. So I don't know if that's going to be on and on. And we're placing a bet that building a brand that is owning the integration of AI is going to be attractive and is going to be reflective in the next few years of efficiency and forward thinking. But think about it. If you're a client, you hire somebody a bunch of money to do something, you just want to make sure they treat it like it's yours, and they put a lot of love into it and they make it great.
Yeah.
And they care enough to know how important it is to you. But how you get there, who cares?
Yeah.
From a client's perspective. The more challenging thing is continue trying to make sure I'm having empathy for my team and the people that we hire whose jobs are getting kind of spun around because of this. That's a harder thing to do. I had to let go of copywriter and a director of marketing, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't easy, but they unfortunately, they were really specialists, and they were not seeing. It was very hard to get them to see the broader thing. It's like weird, like their taste was a little off in places. And ultimately, if I saw that understanding, I could keep them going. But if they didn't have it, and also empathy for my account manager I mentioned, who Kara, who had to start, tackling this new technology, just having empathy for, this is scary and this is hard, but I'm going to be patient with you because I believe in you, because I want you to succeed. Like, as an employer, that's like something it's very top of mind right now for me, is kind of empathy in both respects, I think. You know?
Yeah.
But on the client side, like, I just don't think they care as long as you're giving them great work. Like we're creating a new music festival right now, an EDM festival in Wisconsin on a farm. It's going to have like 30,000 people, and it's for its first year, which is pretty ambitious. They needed a name. And do you not think I chat GPT the shit out of that? Like, and this is what's so cool. It didn't give me the name, but it gave me something that got me to the name. Like, I didn't think of that. So this, I'll let the cat out of the bag to the 60-something people on the call. This thing, it's a festival called Force Fields. Well, ChatGPT, I said, I want something that means farm and something that means aliens. And it gave me tractor beam. And I'm like, that's so good. I wouldn't have made the connection between those two things. Yep. The tractor beam is a little hokey as a name, but Force Fields, it's pretty badass, right? And so we got Force Fields from tractor beam. So it's not like we're handing it off to ChatGPT to do all the work, but it's like another brain. It's like a really, really fast brain that's like throwing things out. I think people still ultimately are the ones, at least for now, that have taste, that there's a nuance and a subtlety to making things and creativity that AI's got a long way to go as far as taste.
All right, thanks, Ann. CJ Fletcher, you're up next.
Sorry, there we go. Hi, everybody. Hey, PJ. I'm CJ, and long live the initial creators. Makes me very happy. First of all, I'm going to say I got to figure out a way of sending you my CV because I want to work for you. And secondly, more of the question about that's my shameless try to get a job.
CJ,
you guys hear him?
Did you go muted?
I lost CJ.
Okay, we'll loop back to CJ, but up next, we'll until he's back, we will go with Corey Sandler.
Well, I'm just drooling. I'm trying not to show all the drool from my mouth. I'm incredibly awed, AWED, by what you've just shared. I'm a potter. I'm a musician. I'm a potter. Not a musician in your scale, but music and clay is what kind of have circled around my life for a long time. I'm 62, and I all of a sudden found myself telling stories with ChatGPT to little kids and the people who are following me on TikTok. Now I'm making some pretty cool ass images, actually. Like I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I have no idea what to do with this though. Like I'm sitting here and it's me and my computer. I live in a world. So it's interesting. The one thing I wanted to say about how nimble you're suggesting that your clients are and they don't care what you're doing and such. And other people, as I'm reading the chat, are saying, it's a positive because clients will see that you are elevated and you are, going forward in the new frontier, so to speak. The world that I live in, that I'm in, like, that's it. There's nobody around me that is interested, that isn't terrified, that isn't looking at me like I have 17 eyes, not 3, like I got 17 eyes. And they don't get how and what it is that I'm finding interesting. Labor force is going to suffer, like all of the things that come up. And yet I'm that pivoting person, but I have no idea so I can pivot fine, but I don't know how to put a foot forward into wherever it is that's next. Besides saying, ChatGPT, what do I do next? Like I just don't even know. Like I have all of these interesting series of images that I'm creating right now. Is licensing still something that people do, or is it no, Corey, you're the licenser. You got to figure out what to do with these things. I'm kind of lost. Like, and I'm very easy to admit that.
Isn't that fun? Isn't it fun to be lost? Like the best. And it's fun to be lost when you're not afraid of it, like when you're just kind of letting it happen. And I don't know. I think who knows where this is all going to end up. I think it's just keep losing yourself in it. It will find a way, I think. That whole like saying of like, the people who like think like, well, I don't, when they get out of college, well, I'm not sure I want to be this, I'm not sure I want to be that. And they don't really ever decide. They just sort of like are thinking. There's just like a truth in doing, nobody cares like what you're thinking, it's like, it's except for you, but just putting things down, there's such a truth in that, I think. And just like combining a bunch of things and put it there, like, oh, that exists now. Like it's, I mean, I haven't made a penny with music in a long time, but it's just like, what a joy to just make a thing and then it exists. No matter whether I exist or not, that thing's going to last. One of my favorite things is just like, I go down to my basement where I have a flat file with all my drawings. I have 3,000 published drawings now. And I'm just like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with it. Like, and that's like, do I sell them? Do I exhibit them? Do I do this or that? Like, or do I just like open them up every once in a while and, flip through them? And that's just like a great human experience to take it in. I don't know. I try not to be, I would try not to be too hard on yourself. Let this wash over you, and you'll see there'll be some connections that'll happen. Something will marinate. I think there's a risk in not at least trying and doing and putting things out. That's where, things don't really go anywhere. So it's great. I think it's great that you're just like swimming in this right now. It's awesome. And it's an area that most people are really kind of, like you said, they're kind of terrified of it, but they'd have fun playing with it. It'll find its way.
I certainly am having that.
But isn't that a lot? That's a lot too. I mean, just the human experience of like creativity and things popping up. It's like, that's like, I mean, it's like a drug. I'm like a drug addict for like making shit. I think I just love it's funny. I was getting in kind of a doldrum recently, focused on business and making money and margins and the side of this stuff that kind of like wears me out. And then I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to take a Saturday. I'm just going to make a song. And it was like medicine. I don't know. I think it keeps you, making things, creativity. It's like therapy. It's like medicine. It's so good for you. I think that's kind of like what we're designed to do is create, So I don't know. Not to go too mushy and whatnot, but like I think it's awesome that you're experimenting with it, and don't worry about it. It'll find its purpose,
I hope so.
All right, thanks, Corey, and let's go.
Thank you.
We only got a few more minutes, so let's get the last question in. Greg, you're up.
Hey, thanks, PJ. Awesome. Totally resonated. Everything you're talking about. The long live the generalists. So my question here is, what your take is on the collective imposter syndrome that at least I'm feeling. What I mean by that is I am delivering some amazing work for my clients, and it's only because of AI, generative AI. And it's hard for me to take responsibility to say, this is mine, like I've done this. And as a creator, I think we're all struggling with the self-identity and this imposter syndrome, at least I'm feeling. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that. What is your advice or your take on taking ownership and responsibility and claiming the output that we're creating with generative AI?
I mean, there was this like saying when I was in school that there's no such thing as an original idea, right? This would get thrown around all the time. That every new idea is basically a recombination of something that came before, right? So whether you're a musician or whatever you are, right? If you make things, you're basically you're just really recombining things in a way that's new, that's somewhat familiar to people so that it's relatable, but then you're adding a little bit of different, right? Like if you do something crazy and weird and abstract out of nowhere, people don't know what to make of it. But if you kind of take a thing they're familiar with and you tweak it a bit and you evolve it, then they connect with it. I think that's what this technology is kind of doing. It's just speeding that up. It's not like a lot of people are barking about licensing and again, I'm not going to use the right language here, but where this is all IP infringement, and I don't agree. It's like, it's like saying if you use the chords from Blackbird, are you ripping off Paul McCartney? No, as long as you take it and you do something, you evolve the conversation, you take it somewhere. I think AI just does that really quickly. It just kind of, it takes your direction and it kind of evolves things in that way. But so I don't think any of that is when you say imposter syndrome, I assume that's what you're saying is like, well, this isn't real because AI made it for me.
No, I mean, taking responsibility, saying, I did this.
You did.
You did, because you're prompting. Oh, that's not right. You're prompting again. That's not right. You're prompting again. I mean, let me ask you this question. If you're a creative director, let's put it this way. If you're a movie director, right? And you have cinematographers, you have actors, you have right? All these people are making this thing. The director is still taking ownership of it because ultimately it's their vision and their decisions that are guiding which way you go. You have a lot of contributors. To me, and maybe this is where I think people might argue against me. I think that's what this is. You still need a director. You still need somebody making the decisions. I used to say as a creative director or an art director, if I was doing design, my job wasn't to design everything or be like the last, whatever on everything. I was like a fisherman. My job was to pull fish out of the water and grab the good ones, right? That's really the job, because there's a lot of talented people are way more talented than me contributing to this. I just have to be the decider on those things. So I don't know, Greg, if you agree with that, but that's how I've always looked at it. And I feel like the designers can take as much credit for the work as I can, being the kind of art director or creative director of it. It's still my work as much as it's theirs, I think. It's the same way as Christopher Nolan. They're his films, even though he's not playing the part of Oppenheimer. He's not behind the camera on every shot. He's not writing the music. It's the sum of its parts, I think.
Yep. PJ, I just want to be cognizant of time. It's 7:00. Are you cool with one more question?
I'm good.
Okay.
I don't know where to go.
Okay, awesome.
All right, then I guess we will end with Jim. You're up.
We'll end with a non-AI question then.
Good.
I got a music question for you. So you recommend I go see Martin Sexton in concert? He's going to be in town on Friday.
Oh yeah,
1000%.
He's a force of nature.
Yeah,
he's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a guy that knows his songs so well that you never know where he's going to play them, and he's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like seeing somebody with a blank sheet of paper do something great, right? Like it's a guy with a guitar, and you won't believe what he's able to do with that in its simplest form. There's no backing band. There's nobody's dressing it up. You can't hide behind anything. It's just him, and it's magical.
Yeah, he plays the audience as much as he plays his guitar.
That's well said. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm a Canadian, and I saw him at Newport Folk Festival about 25, 30 years ago, maybe.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
the young Martin Sexton then.
Yeah,
it's funny, when I used to write with him, I'd sing with him. He's such a better singer than I am, and it would make me a better singer because I'd be just like he'd be raising my game whenever we'd hang out. And then I wouldn't see him for a while, and I'd be like, I'm getting bad at singing because I'm not spending enough time with him, because it's just like there's just something you vibe off of somebody with that kind of ability and talent.
Yeah. I know CJ had a question for PJ and then got cut off. CJ, do you still have a question you want to ask PJ?
Yeah, can you hear me at all?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So it was really about the copywriting portion. I think I might have missed it. Eric Sander, thank you for jumping in and kind of clarifying for me. But I'll ask this, PJ, with the copywriters being let go, Eric mentioned that it was the account managers who is now handling that. So
and the creative directors. It's not just account. It's more of a collaboration now between those two.
Between which two?
Creative director and account director.
Creative director and account. Okay, so then how do they handle it, editing that GPT-4 when it used to be copywriters who was, really kind of doing that heavy lifting? That's all.
They're both contributing. So the account director is actually doing more of the copywriting now than the creative director. Creative director is spending more time pitching and kind of looking at the big picture and directing the designers. But again, it's just because Tara is got such great taste and she gets it. I'm confident I was very confident she'd be able to pick it up. I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like cultural acuity, if that's, I don't know if that's the right word, but like somebody just like understands the rhythm of like what works and what doesn't. And by the way, she's a relationship manager, she's a project manager, she's very good at that. But like, I'm looking for people where I can say, is this good? Am I off? Is this right? And I can get that sort of response. Or where like a lot of times she'll send me work, whether it's writing or design, and I'll say first, like, just to kind of feel out to make sure we're on the same page. Like, what do you think? And she'll be like, yeah, it's not, I like this. I don't like this. It's not really there. And we almost always agree. And maybe it's like a alignment of sensibilities, but I just do think there's like something about good taste that when you love great work and you just like digest it, whether it's great writing or design or art or blah, 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 music, whatever it is, you can kind of, you kind of know it when you see it. Ira Glass had a whole thing about this.
I was just going to ask you about that quote. Do you know the Ira Glass quote?
Yeah, I love it. Where he's like, it took me years to get good taste. You know, I always knew, he's like, he always knew what he kind of wanted, but it took him a while to be able to kind of align his taste with his expression. I've heard that quote so many times. I think it's so cool.
It's a great one.
PJ, thank you so much. I appreciate the answer there, and I'll send you that CV shortly.
Yeah, please do.
Awesome. PJ, first of all, great to see you. Thank you. That was really amazing. And just thank you for sharing so generously and freely.
Oh my God, you guys are amazing. This is such an incredible group of like kind, empathetic. I mean, this just like community. It's like so great when you stumble on stuff like this. Kyle, what you guys are doing it's really great. It just feels awesome.
Thank you. Well, one of our traditions here is we give you a well-deserved golf clap. So golf claps for PJ. Really, really awesome. So thank you so much. And yeah, this is going to be recorded. CJ is now taking over YouTube, so this will be up on YouTube, and we'll probably cut some pieces out of this because there was a lot of good stuff said tonight. So thank you so much, Leah. Wow, what do you think?
I know, mind blown. What the wisdom that dropped in the salon. Thank you, PJ, for being here. It's so cool to have an hour to just listen to your wisdom and hear what you had to say. And I wanted to give just notes to everyone commenting as well. Chat, all kinds of interesting side conversations going on too. And Kyle, always good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you all very much for being here. It's 7:06. Go be with your families or go do shit on AI. I will see you on the AI Learning Lab in I don't know, 2 hours.
And I want to drop a quick reminder for everyone to do their Valentines and drop them into show and tell. Let's see them there. All right,
everybody. Peace out.
There is no push here of Faf Skis Neves Skia Nyan Next
Please remember, you are human.